If you can go back in your job search, man, what would you do? This is job search number one for you, knowing everything now. Like, what would be the top three things you would convey or do differently? Maybe put yourself in the shoes of someone who has zero experience. They hear our talk. They want to start, like, making moves. Like, where do they start? What are top three things maybe you could
Yeah, the very first thing that comes to mind with that question is, no doubt, is like the content stuff. I think number one thing, if I would have went back, is don't tell yourself that you don't have like a story to tell, because think about like your own self, what you enjoy reading. I know when I get on LinkedIn, it's not just Salesforce. I care about, honestly, if there was a dude on LinkedIn that told me cool stories about what it was like to work at McDonald's, I would be following that guy. If he was like, yeah, pretty crazy, like we had this thing happen, and it was like funny stories or like interesting things about how McDonald's does things, or how you'd move up in McDonald's and get to be a manager. I don't care that it's McDonald's. I care that it's like an interesting thing. Like nobody talks about that. I don't know those answers. I don't know what it's like to work there. I've never worked there. So I think the number one thing that happens is people think you got to have this cool title to talk about something. And even if you're a student, like I said, working at McDonald's, you have a part-time job, everybody's got something cool to say. It's learning that copyright that I said of, how do I format this? How do I bring value? And I think value is just entertainment or education. So if you can do something like that, people want to read it. So to fall into that. So I'd say the very first thing, if I could go back and make things easier for myself, would be posting like right off the bat. Like as I got back from this mission of mine and okay, I'm in college, I'm going to get a LinkedIn, I'm going to start posting. I think that'd be like number one. And number two would be, I liked your hunting analogy a lot. I think that's a big one. I still do that to this day, where I don't get as focused about what I want. And I think it's probably fine because we're all trying to learn. So I probably wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule, but I do think that there is a lot of picking and choosing that you should be doing. And if you're doing number one, you have more options on number two. Sometimes we get into this mode where you think you have to get a job, or as Josh and I talked, oh, they're paying me more, so I'm going to take it. That's not always what you want, especially as you're younger and you're trying to figure it out. Sometimes it's honestly just about where you work, because if you could post content and get a job at LinkedIn or Google or Amazon or a large company as your first job, then you're really set up for what's going to be coming next, because that plays a lot into the prestige factor and like where you were, who you worked with, best practices. So number two, I would say, going back to your hunting analogy, be focused about what you're actually looking for, who you want to work for, try to select that. Number three, I think what would be easier is still working with this one, but this one's untold, but negotiation tactics. I honestly hate this. I think, I think from A to Z, the quicker you learn this, if you're listening to this, the quicker you learn this, the better off you will be. In my experience and in my opinion, as much as what the employer does for you you're appreciative of, nothing is in your benefit. Like nothing. Like from getting the job to what we just talked about, we're going through resumes, we're putting out content, we're posting. Like all this is in the benefit of the employer to take a lower risk on somebody that they're trying to hire. Like they end up paying us and things like that. But there's nothing, in my opinion, that really goes in our favor. Like you get in, you go through a wonky interview process with everybody. Some are better than most, but in general, speaking with companies, you go through this interview process where you feel interrogated, you feel like you have to prove, and if you didn't say things just the way you wanted to, then it doesn't work out. You spend a lot of your own time. You have probably a current job that you have to set time aside to go and interview and go on site and all these things. Honestly, I really wish we could come up with a better like employee standing interview process from A to Z, because the weirdest part at the end of all that, let's say you pass all that, is this negotiation part. And to Josh and I's point, there's so many things that can be negotiated that it's not just like your base pay. That is a big part of it, but there's PTO, there's stocks, there's plenty of other things that you can sit there and negotiate of like what you would need for like you to move over. Equity, all this kind. And so I think the last part there is like the more I've tried to learn that, the better it's been for me. But it is something that we don't try to do. You feel guilty sometimes for doing it. You feel like you're taking from them. But the reality is we got to think back to all these things. We got to think back to how much cost is it for the company to hire a recruiter, pay that recruiter to find people, spend time from all these people to interview people. How much is it going to be to actually hire you on? How much time is it going to take to ramp you up? How much time is it going to train you? What do you need? Is there equipment that's being upgraded? So when you take that into the grand scheme of things, like most of the time, they are getting the way better deal at the end of the bargain here, where we don't negotiate because we don't know how and we feel awkward, and then we get undersold on what we're trying to do. So negotiation is a huge one, and I wouldn't say feel awkward about it. Get comfortable with it. Try to work on it. Read about it. Chris Voss is like a good one that everyone always references. He's like used to be a dude that talked people down in the FBI, like from like hostile situations and stuff. So now he has his own company. I think it's called Black Swan, and he talks a lot about like negotiation tactics that you could use. But it ends up being this whole game, and it's awkward because for myself, being in these situations, I'm like, I'm a Salesforce admin. I don't know how to do this. And then on the flip side of the coin, you got a recruiter that does it all day, every day. So it's like really you're up against this awkward situation where it's like this person's a pro and I'm an amateur. I have no idea how to do this. So it gets you in these weird spots. So I would say to maximize feeling happy at a company, like you want to make what you want to make. You want to have the perks you want to have. You want to have the PTO that you have. So I think if you did all three of those things, if you post content that gives you like this authoritative, hey, I know what I'm doing, and more confidence. Number two, being focused about, okay, this is who I'm going after. And then three, kind of ties it all together, which is cool. I've been working on these negotiation tactics. I am going to be selective. I am going to fight for what I think I should get. I think that would really just improve where I'm at right now and make things a lot easier. I'd probably be in a different situation if I was better at those from the get-go.
Yeah, negotiation is huge, man, and I haven't done a ton of talking about that. And I think I need to, because I think I would have probably been making maybe 10K less if I did not negotiate and ask for things. And it doesn't have to feel, you don't have to feel creepy and stuff. Now I want to talk about negotiation, but we're coming up on some time. But yeah, it doesn't have to feel creepy, and you don't have to feel slimy, or no one has to take advantage of anyone. But no, you're absolutely right. Make sure to get what you need out of the equation too, because it is that. Yeah, we've been trained to be so grateful for our paycheck. Yeah. We realize actually I'm providing a service. Like you're hiring me because of my skill set that I built in myself.